Sarah had worked the night shift for years at St. James Hospital. The quiet of the halls and the soft hum of machines had become a strange comfort, even though many of her colleagues disliked the eerie silence that blanketed the place after midnight. But something had changed lately, something unsettling. It started with room 304. The first time Sarah noticed something odd, it was a week ago. Room 304 had been empty for months, ever since the patient, an elderly woman named Mrs. Doyle, passed away. Mrs. Doyle had been in hospice care, suffering from dementia, but her death had been peaceful. Sarah still remembered the night it happened. She had been holding Mrs. Doyle's hand when she passed, murmuring a soft prayer under her breath. That night, as Sarah walked by room 304, she heard it, a soft, rhythmic tapping, like someone gently knocking on the window. She froze, her heart skipping a beat. The room was locked, as all vacant rooms were. She shook her head, brushing it off as the wind rattling the old panes, but the sound stayed with her. A few nights later, while on her rounds, Sarah noticed something strange again. The light above room 304 was flickering, which wasn't unusual in an old hospital. But as she approached, she felt a chill crawl up her spine. The door, which should have been locked, was slightly ajar. Maybe maintenance left it open, she thought, though she knew they rarely worked at night. Hesitant, Sarah pushed the door open. The room was dark, save for the faint moonlight creeping through the blinds. She was about to turn and leave when something caught her eye. A shadow, a shape, sitting in the chair by the bed. "Hello," she whispered, stepping into the room. The shape didn't move. It sat there, still and silent, almost as if it were watching her. Sarah reached for the light switch, her fingers trembling. As the fluorescent lights flickered on, the chair was empty. Her breath caught in her throat. She blinked, trying to make sense of what she had seen, or thought she had seen. The chair was vacant, the bed neatly made, and the room was as it should be. Sarah backed out of the room, her hands shaking. For the next few nights, Sarah avoided room 304. She didn't mention the incident to anyone, not even her closest colleagues, afraid they'd think she was losing it from working too many night shifts. But the room seemed to call to her, its door always just slightly ajar, as if inviting her in. One night, while finishing her paperwork in the nurse's station, the monitor beeped. Room 304, vital signs registering. A patient, lying in the bed, heart rate, oxygen levels, everything. But the room was supposed to be empty. Sarah stared at the screen, her pulse racing. She grabbed her flashlight and rushed to room 304, dreading what she might find. The door was wide open this time, and the same cold air greeted her as she stepped inside. The bed was made, untouched, but when she looked down at the floor, she froze. There, next to the bed, were two perfectly clear footprints in the dust. A wave of nausea swept over her. They were small, like a child's or an old woman's, standing exactly where Mrs. Doyle had died. Sarah stumbled backward, her mind spinning. Suddenly the light in the room flickered, and for a brief moment, she saw her. A frail old woman, sitting in the chair by the bed, her vacant eyes staring into nothingness. The image lasted only a second, but it was enough to send Sarah running. In the hallway, Sarah leaned against the wall, struggling to catch her breath. She had no explanation for what she had seen, but she knew one thing for sure. Mrs. Doyle wasn't at rest. Sarah put in a transfer request the next morning, leaving the night shift behind for good. But every so often, late at night, the nurses passing by room 304 report strange things. The faint sound of tapping, the flicker of lights, and sometimes, just sometimes, the feeling that they're being watched. None of them stay on the night shift for long.